if you think about, again, the classic Milton Friedman inflation, which is what inflation is, which is too much money chasing too few goods, you print more money and it bids up the supply of goods. What has been happening in the U.S. economy? The Fed prints all this money, yet that money doesn't lose a lot of value. Look at the exchange rate of the dollar versus other currencies. We've had this massive explosion of money printing, big increase in the Fed's balance sheet, but on a relative basis, the dollar hasn't lost a lot of value relative to other currencies, despite the fact that we've dramatically increased the supply. Imagine if the United States existed as an island. We didn't trade with any other nation. So any money the Federal Reserve printed just stayed within our borders. It didn't go anywhere, right? And so the only stuff you could buy with the money the Fed printed was the stuff that we made here domestically, because that was the only source of goods. Well, obviously the effect would have been much different, because if the Fed prints a bunch of money and we don't have any stuff, we're not producing, we don't have factories making stuff, then the prices are obviously going to go way up. But there was kind of like an escape valve that allowed the Fed to print a lot of money and it not push up the price of goods. And that was the fact that we have a whole world out there that was able to produce the goods that the U.S. economy couldn't. And we were able to take all the money that the Federal Reserve printed and then use that money to buy all those goods that were made outside the United States. So the Fed prints money, right? The government gets it, sends it to Americans. Americans take that money and buy Chinese goods with it. And now the Chinese send us their goods and we send the Chinese our money. So the money the Fed creates is shipped abroad. So it's not in America bidding up prices, but now the goods that the Chinese produced, they get shipped to America. So now we have all those extra goods to keep a lid on prices. And if you look at the breakdown of the CPI between goods and services, if you just look at services, you've seen a substantial increase in prices, even with the government rigging the CPI, because the cost of services has actually risen by more than what the government admits. But if you strip out goods, you'll see a much bigger increase in prices. Why? Because we can't easily import those services. There isn't a foreign alternative. You can't outsource that stuff because the services have to be performed locally. But when it comes to goods, more and more goods have been outsourced to cheaper production economies like China. And so that's kept the lid on goods prices. And so when you average the goods prices with the service prices, that's kept the measured rate of inflation lower. I mean, think about the low production costs in a country like China, which, 20 years ago, they were just starting out. They went through a long period of time where they had a communist system, not just in name, but in practice. And so you had a lot of very poor people. And as they began to embrace capitalism, wages started at a very low level. And of course, they didn't have a lot of the rules and regulations that we had. They didn't have all these environmental protections. And so the cost of manufacturing and the cost of labor, capital was all much lower in a country like China. And so we were able to outsource that production in order to keep costs down, even as the Federal Reserve was printing money. And of course, the money that we were printing, we were sending abroad. See, now normally this wouldn't work, because if you ran a big trade deficit like the one the US is running, your currency would crash, because your trading partners would have all this currency, but they'd have nothing to buy, because the whole purpose of trade is that you export to import. You have a concept of comparative advantage. And if, as a nation, there are certain things that you can produce efficiently, and there are other things that you can't, rather than producing everything, you produce just what you can make efficiently, and then you trade that for the things that you don't produce efficiently, because maybe your trading partner can produce that more efficiently. And so by everybody concentrating on what they make efficiently and then trading, everybody ends up with more stuff, higher living standards, lower prices. But the goal of your exports is to pay for your imports. You don't just export for the sake of exporting. That's just a waste of resources.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now
I have bad news for you. If you're not rich by now, you're screwed. And if you're in debt, you're even double screwed. How so, you might wonder? Well, the sad truth is that you're working your whole life to make someone else rich. The mega corporations, the banks, the politicians, everyone is getting richer. They get your money. And what is even worse, they get your time, they get your life. You are not even in a rat race, you're in a financial prison. But what could a solution for you look like? Honestly, I don't know, but I know what a solution for me would look like. It's very simple. I use whatever money I have and I multiply it with 1,000. This could make my life much easier and probably yours as well. If you have $1,000 available and multiply this with 1,000, I believe that this could solve some financial issue for the one or the other. Of course, if you're ugly, you would have to multiply it with much more than 1,000. My name is Markus Dahn, and this is what I decided to do. I decided to 1000x my money. This is not a joke. I know what you may be thinking. What is this guy talking about? How should this work? This is not possible. Well, I made a detailed video where I laid out my plan. And some clever folks might even want to look at this plan and copy it and do exactly what I do. This is just a little hint on the side. You have two options. You leave, you forget what you have seen. You do whatever you're doing and you hope that somehow you get some other results. Good luck with that. Or you click the link below the video. You enter your email address because I'm not showing this to everybody. You at least watch my video on how I plan to 1000x my money. The choice is yours. Make the right choice. Join me. See what a different future you could have. See at least how I intend, how I plan to do the 1000x. So click on the link below, enter your email address, and I see you on the other side. Your Markus Dahn.